Ladies and gentlemen, hello, we're watching L24 Midnight News Edition coming to you live from the capital Algiers. And to the headlines. The Algerian president starts a two-day state visit to Qatar in a working visit on Saturday where he will meet with Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani. In the Middle East, Zionist forces injured on Friday several Palestinians at the weekly procession against colonization in the northwestern part of the occupied West Bank. White UN chief awaits an answer from Putin on the proposal to extend the Black Sea grain deal. The Turkish president confirmed an agreement with his Russian counterpart to extend the pact. After Beijing was accused of pursuing policies that challenged U.S. interests, China described the NATO bloc as a true troublemaker alliance that fueled tensions around the world. Hello again and welcome. I'm your host Abdulrahim Kashur, and those were today's top stories. Starting from the local matter, Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune is scheduled to travel to Qatar in a working visit today, Saturday, and the following day, where he will meet with Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, the state's Emir, according to a statement issued by the Presidency of the Republic. In the African continent, the UN support mission in Libya urged Libyan authorities to end the shutdown of Libya's Al-Fil, Sharara and 108 of oil fields that have been subjected to repeated closures for different political reasons. More Blair.
The UN support mission in Libya urged Libyan authorities to immediately reopen Libyan oil fields after they have been shut down by protesters in response to the abduction of a former finance minister. It warned that such actions could affect the primary source of income for the Libyan people.
United Nations support mission in Libya is disturbed by reports of the shutdown of some oil fields in response to the abduction of Mr. Boumtari. This would needlessly cost the Libyan people their main source of income. The shutdown must be immediately ended. Libya's oil and other natural resources should not be used as a bargaining tool in any form of internal dispute.
The UN also called on all political, security and social leaders to refrain from any form of escalation, including using incendiary rhetoric stating that Libya cannot afford further division and deterioration. Al-Fil Sahara field, one of Libya's largest oil outputs, with a capacity of 300,000 barrels per day, has been a frequent target for several political reasons and demands by local protesters. Torn apart by civil conflict since 2011, Libya is making efforts to reunite divided institutions in order to find a way leading to elections. However, observers say that some parties intend to renew conflicts, which will escalate the situation in Libya.
In Libya still, the High National Election Commission in Libya pledged to make every effort to hold simultaneous elections in all municipal councils in the various regions of the country in order to pave the way for more stability and enhance citizens' confidence in officials of local administrations. The Commission affirmed in a statement that it will endeavor during the next period to issue executive regulations to put enter law number 20 into force. Tunisia's trade balance deficit declined during the first half of this year compared to the same period in 2022. To record 26.6% according to a report issued by the National Institute of Statistics in Tunisia. The value of exports increased by 10%, while the value of imports declined. Consumer price inflation slowed in the country in conjunction with dropping goods prices. The European Parliament adopted a new resolution accusing Morocco of interfering in the affairs of European Union member states. EU Parliament has called for a greater vigilance and caution not to repeat the scandal that has shaken the European legislative institution, during which many MPs have been involved. The plenary session of the European Parliament on Thursday proposed the establishment of effective control and surveillance systems to detect attempts by governments to interfere in activities of European institutions. Members of the Moroccan Parliament have raised concerns about the Makhzen regime's decision to grant license to Zionist investors for avocado cultivation, which further strains weather resources in the midst of drought crisis that hit the country. Hussein Burkan.
While millions of Moroccans struggle to access clean water, the Makhzen regime is exacerbating the water scarcity issue by cooperating with Zionist entities that exploit Moroccan water resources under the guise of agricultural investments. This marks the second time in 2 years that the Moroccan regime has allowed Zionist projects to cultivate avocado, a fruit that requires around 2,000 liters of water to produce just 1 kilogram.
The Morocco Green Plan aimed to achieve food and water security, but these avocado projects with Israel raised questions about good governance and the selective nature of public policies.
Zionist influence in Morocco's agricultural sector is further evident with their control of over 80% of the seed market, including high water consumption crops.
Unfortunately, statistics reveal that 80% of the seeds used in the Moroccan market come from Israel. This includes commonly consumed vegetables like tomatoes. It's alarming to realize that such a significant portion of our food supply is reliant on Israeli sources.
Amid the deepening water crisis in Morocco, the Makhzen regime continues to prioritize the export of water resources, leaving its citizens without access to drinking water.
We were expecting the Morocco Green Plan to ensure our food and water security. However, we now face a depletion of water resources due to certain agricultural projects. It's time to put an end to this and adapt our agricultural practices to the current situation. Moroccans are suffering and their access to water is becoming increasingly limited.
Despite official rhetoric, the Makhzen regime persistently squanders Morocco's water resources, leaving millions of citizens to bear the consequences of an escalating water crisis.
In Africa, still 8 people were found dead after their Europe-bound boat capsized off the coast of northern Senegal this week. Several migrants have died or gone missing along the Atlantic migration route recently. The bodies were recovered by Senegalese Fire Department and Navy, and a search for survivors have been launched. Senegal's Interior Minister Felix Abdoulaye Diom said that the bodies were brought to the northern coastal city of St. Louis. The director of city's morgue, Mortala Mbaye, said that approximately 155 people were on board, and many of the survivors had been injured and were receiving treatment in military zone in the city. The prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Karim Khan, announced the opening of an investigation to look into responsibility for the mass grave discovered in Sudan's western region of Darfur. The U.S. State Department expressed in a statement its strong condemnation of ethnically targeted killings and the ongoing atrocities committed by the Rapid Support Forces and the allied militias in West Darfur, and affirmed joining the international and regional parties to demand an immediate end to the fighting. At least 87 people were killed and buried in mass grave in Darfur, with the Human Rights Office confirming having evidence of the involvement of the Rapid Support Forces in this crime.
The Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights released a report which detailed allegations concerning the killing of 87 ethnic Masalit, allegedly by the RSF. and members of their allied militia in West Darfur. We are investigating those allegations. We are, by any analysis, not on the precipice of a human catastrophe, but in the very midst of one. It is occurring. And it's my analysis and my prayer and advice that we must act urgently, collectively, to protect the most vulnerable.
Zionist occupation forces on Friday suppressed an anti-settlement march in the village of Safa, northwest of Ramallah in the West Bank. Palestinian sources said that the occupying forces fired toxic gas bombs towards the citizens who marched after Friday prayers. This comes as the occupation forces were deployed on the streets of Al-Quds and around Al-Aqsa Mosque, stopping worshippers and checked their personal cars. The Syrian government has granted its approval to the United Nations to allow the guiding of humanitarian aid through Bab al-Hawa border crossing, considered the main gate leading to the northwest of the country that has been closed since the end of the United Nations mandate a few days ago. The Syrian representative to the United Nations, Bassam Sabagh, said that Damascus took the sovereign decision to authorize the United Nations and its specialized agencies to use the crossing to provide humanitarian aid to civilians in need in the northwestern Syria for a period of 6 months, starting from the 13th of July.
The government of the Syrian Arab Republic has taken the sovereign decision to grant the United Nations and its specialized agencies permission to use Bab al-Hawa crossing to deliver humanitarian aid to civilians in need in the northwest Syria, in full cooperation and coordination with the Syrian government for the period of 6 months starting from July 13, 2023.
As the deadline for the Black Sea grain deal approaches its end, calls are now growing to rescue another extension for the deal. This comes as the Russian President Vladimir Putin warned his country that may quit the grain deal if demands are not met. Nabil Khazini.
The accord allowing for Ukrainian grain to be exported via the Black Sea is set to expire on Monday. The deal, being so crucial in alleviating a global food crisis, has come up with a lot of ink and speculations about the possibility of its extension for another time. On November last year, the United Nations and Ukraine announced that the agreement had been extended for another 120 days. In March, Turkey and the UN announced that they secured a second extension for at least another 60 days. In May, the deal was once again extended for 60 days, expiring on the 18th of July. 5 days before its expiration, the Russian president says his country may quit Black Sea grain deal if demands are not met. This raises questions of whether the deal can be saved. Calls are now growing to rescue another extension for the Black Sea grain deal.
As you know, we are in preparation to host Mr. Putin in Turkey in August, and we are in agreement that Black Sea grain corridor should be extended. Mr. Guterres from the UN also sent a letter to Mr. Putin. I hope that with this letter and the joint effort made by us and Russia, the grain corridor will be extended.
More than 32 million tons of corn, wheat and other grains have been exported by Ukraine under the arrangement. Russia has complained that not enough reaches poor countries. About a potential withdrawal from the initiative, the Kremlin says no final decision has been made.
In the latest field development, the Ukrainian Air Force reported that 16 drones were shot down last night during a Russian attack on the southeast of the country. The Ukrainian army in turn announced that it had received cluster munitions only a week after Washington decided to supply these bombs to Kiev. For its part, the Kremlin had warned that Russia would be forced to take the countermeasures if Ukraine used U.S. cluster bombs.
Ukraine has what it needs to be able to continue the fight. While that expansion is taking place, these cluster munitions act as kind of a bridging capability. And so we want them to be able to continue to keep pressure on the enemy throughout and support their maneuver plans. And so that's why the president made this deliberate decision to provide this.
Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said Russia will study the situation with the legal status of the Wagner Group. Peskov's remarks comes after President Vladimir Putin told the business daily Kommersant that Wagner has operated without legal basis. Mr. Putin added that the government and the parliament have yet to discuss the issue of private military contractors.
When answering a question of the Kommersant correspondent, the president said that such a legal entity as the Wagner private military company does not exist and has never existed de jure, and that this is an issue to be studied, to additionally consider. In general, this is quite a difficult issue about the legal status of such companies, which should be studied. Everything else is related to details that we do not disclose. At least, this issue will be under consideration.
China's permanent representative to the United Nations on Thursday denounced the Vilnius communique, which was released at the NATO summit in Lithuania, for being steeped in Cold War mentality and ideological bias. The remarks were made at a UN Security Council on Thursday in response to the communique released at the end of the NATO summit on Tuesday, and which said that China posed systematic challenges to the alliance.
NATO presents itself as a regional organization, yet it exceeds the geographical limits set by its own treaty and interferes in global affairs. Its eastward expansion into the Asia-Pacific region has led to negative consequences for both regional and global security. Despite claiming to be a defensive alliance, NATO encourages its members to increase military expenditures and engage in military operations worldwide, consistently overstepping its boundaries and provoking confrontations.
Foreign ministers of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations on Thursday condemned violence in Myanmar again and repeated support for peace, a 5-point plan ignored by its rulers as the divided bloc struggle to find unity over the protracted crisis. Myanmar has been ravaged by deadly violence since a military coup ousted the Aung San Suu Kyi government in February 2021, unleashing a bloody crackdown on dissent.
5-point implementasi 5-point konsensus masih merupakan prioritas bagi ASEAN untuk membantu Myanmar.
As we work to advance this affirmative vision, this affirmative agenda for the region, we're responding to challenges to our shared security and prosperity and to the broader international order. As the military regime in Myanmar continues to commit atrocities and undermine regional stability, there was broad support in today's meetings for continuing to press the regime to end the violence and to fulfill its commitments under ASEAN's 5-point consensus.
In the U.S. House of Representatives passed its version of a sweeping bill setting policy for the Department of Defense on Friday, but the must-pass bill's chances of becoming law were uncertain after Republicans added a series of culturally conservative amendments. The fiscal 2024 National Defense Authorization Act of the NDAA, which sets policy for Pentagon and authorizes $886 billion in spending, was approved in 2019.
First and foremost, you put your politics aside and you focus on the military so war never becomes. That's what we did today in the NDAA. What the Democrats did was put their politics before the men and women who serve. They said no to a pay raise. They said no to an investment. They sent the wrong message to our adversaries around the world.
India's space agency launched a rocket on Friday that sent on spacecraft into orbit and toward the planned landing next month on the lunar South Pole, an unprecedented feat that would advance India's position as a major space power. About 16 minutes after the launch, the ISRO mission control announced that the rocket had succeeded in putting the Chandrayaan lander into an Earth orbit that will send it looping toward a moon landing next month. And now for more international news, let's follow this roundup by Mohammed Khatou.
Activists of the climate initiative called Last Generation carried out road blockades in several German cities in protest for a change in climate policies on Friday. In incidents in the recent past, activists of the group have used glue to fixate themselves onto the ground in the middle of the street as a sign of protest. The federal cabinet recently approved amendments to the Climate Protection Act. Critics complain that the amendment will take the pressure off the transport sector, which is lagging particularly far behind its climate targets. There are no legal restrictions preventing Guatemala's presidential runoff from being carried out. A top official from the Electoral Tribunal said on Thursday, following a constitutional court ruling suspending an order to sideline the party from the race. This came as the lower court on Wednesday ordered the suspension of presidential candidate Bernardo Arévalo's center-left Simila party, which had thrown the decisive August 20 second-round vote into turmoil. Greece closed the ancient Acropolis during the hottest part of the day on Friday to protect tourists, while Croatian villagers cleaned up after a wildfire as a fierce heat wave swept across southern Europe. The European Space Agency, whose satellites monitor land and sea temperatures, has warned that Italy, Spain, France, Germany and Poland are all facing extreme conditions. Doctors in Spain warned that poorer elderly people with existing health problems were most at risk. On mountain slopes in the Swiss village of Villars-sur-Oyonne, artist Saipe has used chalk and charcoal to paint two giant frescoes of children, sketching how they see the vast world around them. The frescoes, which are painted directly on the grass and can last days depending on weather conditions, show a young boy and girl tracing squiggly lines on sketch pads to depict mountains, stars, trees, and the moon.
And with sports, we reached the closure of our news bulletin. The Serbian tennis star Novak Djokovic has advanced to his third consecutive Grand Slam final this year after defeating Jannik Sinner in the Wimbledon semi-finals Friday, taking into account that Djokovic has already won the Australian Open and the French Open this year. This will lead Djokovic's 9th appearance in the London finals when he is going to play world number 1 Spanish Carlos Alcaraz. If Djokovic wins, he will have a chance to complete the men's singles Grand Slam, winning all 4 major tournaments in one season at the US Open at the end of August. A win in the Wimbledon will bring Djokovic's Grand Slam title total to 24-1. And just as a reminder, Wimbledon final will be played on Sunday between Djokovic and Alcaraz. To this end, ladies and gentlemen, thank you ever so much for being with us. For more updates, you can follow our social media platform. And all I can say at the end, take care of yourself. Good night.